Hello, I'm Renee Rollins, along with Dr. Lisa Burkhardt Worley and Dr. Michelle Burton, and welcome to Pop Talk, the show where you never know what topics might pop up. It is unfortunate, but we've been seeing a lot of pastors fall for one reason or another. And so how can we safeguard against that, as well as the abuse that's in our churches? Our guest today will tell us, and Lisa will introduce him.
Well, thank you so much, Renee. Our guest today is Dr. Sam Rainer. He is a pastor and president of Church Answers, and author of the book, this one, Make My Church Safe. He has several other books as well, including the Church Revitalization Checklist, Understanding the Bible as a Whole, and the Surprising Return of the Neighborhood Church. I want to hear about that. Sam also co-hosts the popular podcast, so popular, it's number 4 in the country. It's called Rainer on Leadership. He's the lead pastor at Bradenton Baptist Church in Bradenton, Florida. So it is so great to meet you. Pastor Sam, Dr. Sam, I don't know what to call you, but we'll call you Sam. How about that on this? Is that all right?
Works. That's what my people call me at my church, and it is an honor to be on your show today.
Well, it's great to have you here. And why did you feel inspired to write a book like this one, Make My Church Safe?
Well, the inspiration for the book started at my own church, and I was looking for resources to help train and equip my own people. And there are several good resources that are out there, but there was nothing that was comprehensive and readable by your average church member. And so that's why I wrote Make My Church Safe, because I wanted to put something accessible into the hands of people who were actually going to read it. So there's plenty of training. There's active shooter, there's a trainings on abuse and things like that. All of those are very good. But I wanted a very practical book for church members that they could accessibly read and actually implement in churches.
Yes. So people do have free will, as we know, and so it's difficult to stop someone from making a bad decision. So is there any way to provide true accountability for leaders and pastors?
Yes, this is the number one missing ingredient in church leadership.
So true.
It's not that leaders would be held accountable. It's that they are willing to be held accountable, that they are proactive about accountability.
Yes.
You can be forced into accountability, and there are times for that. Hear me out. There are times for that. But it's always better when the leaders themselves set up the systems of accountability and give that power to the people that they're leading. Think of a shepherd in a church, right? That's my role. I have systems of accountability in my church. Those systems help keep me in check. And so when you control everything, and when you are the one that gets to decide everything, including how you are going to be held accountable, a lot of times things can get sideways.
I was going to say that's really the case in a lot of churches, and people who are on pastoral staffs, they're afraid to say the truth, right? Because they're afraid they're going to lose their job, and they might if they do that. I don't know how you prevent that.
Yeah, I think one of the ways that you prevent it is to be very clear about your guidelines. Every church is going to have some different guidelines.
Right.
You have different faith traditions, different denominations. Obviously, in a more hierarchical denomination, you're going to have different systems in place, whereas opposed to more congregational, locally autonomous churches. But regardless, the leaders have to be willing and proactive about seeking out that accountability. Without that proactivity, even if they aren't doing anything, the temptation is there. And so this is something that I've championed often with leaders is give that power back to your people so that you can be held accountable.
Right, and they're watching you as well because you're being a role model for them, and they're wanting to make sure that if you're doing it, then it's okay for them to do it as well. And a lot of times you have to be able to have the action that goes along with what you're saying as well.
So at my church, not only is there a membership covenant, there's a pastor covenant as well. And we do believe that pastors are to be held to a higher standard. That may seem unfair, You may say, well, everyone should be held to the same standard. Well, okay, ideally, that's great. But in reality, yes, there is a spotlight on pastors. There is to mix some metaphors here, there's a fishbowl.
Yeah.
And if you're not comfortable with that, then it's probably not the role for you. So I would say that the additional measures of accountability for pastors is not only necessary, but it's also good.
Yes.
It is good. I've said that so many times because I've been on staff at churches for many years, and you do feel like you're in a fishbowl, and you're just right there for everybody to watch your every move. And of course, when you're on the platform every week as a pastor, you're also getting critiqued. As well.
Yes, there is some of that.
I get a little of that as a worship leader.
You
But
probably
I
get
love
emails,
it.
right?
Yeah, give me the accountability. So you hear of abuse too in churches, which is so sad, and it can come from a pastor, it can come from a volunteer. And in your book, you talk about, you describe them as wolves and predators, right? So how can we recognize that? How can we recognize that someone is a wolf or a predator in our midst? What are some characteristics we should be looking for?
So let's make a distinction here between a wolf and a predator.
Okay.
So, wolf in sheep's clothing. That's internal, right?
Right.
A wolf in sheep's clothing
Yes.
is very hard to find because they look the part. They look like a Christian. They look like a pastor. They act like they're supposed to act.
Right.
So a wolf is often someone internal, many times in leadership, who is leveraging that position to do things they shouldn't do.
Right.
A predator comes from the outside. And a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times it's easier to recognize a predator because they are from the outside. You're not used to them. You recognize that they're from the outside. Now, you need safety for both.
Right.
Hear me out. You've got to protect the
Right.
church from predators. You have to protect the church from wolves. But a lot of times, the wolf in sheep's clothing is much harder to identify, which gets back to these accountability measures. This is why they are so important in churches.
Do you have a lot of predators come into churches, you think, who are actually out for no good, who really want to do some things that they shouldn't be doing in the churches? Have you ever seen that?
Absolutely. Every church has a target. If you are doing gospel work, there is a spiritual target on you. If you have children in your church, there's a target on you. So we need to be very vigilant. A predator is often looking for places with lax standards where there are a lot of children, if we're talking child safety, right? Or where there's just vulnerable people. So where are they going to go? They're going to walk into the church, because what happens when a guest walks into the church? Welcome, so glad you're here. Can we take you to wherever you need to go? Which is what churches should be doing. Churches should be hospitable, but churches should also be even more aware that if a predator is going to go somewhere, it's likely going to be them. Because high hospitality, typically a low security environment, which leads to a lot of potential for danger.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think also we just need to be really, it's really important to remember not to take offense, because when I was doing my research study, I attended a Messianic synagogue, and I was an outsider. And so they had to do additional measures of security. Like they looked at my purse, they checked everything just to make sure that there isn't something. So you just got to be sure that, and not be offended when somebody's trying to do that, because it's really only for the greater of the good. So.
Yeah, let me tell you a story. So there was, I was coaching another pastor, and he told me this story of someone bringing in a duffel bag into the church. Nobody knew who this person was. So this was a church that did everything right. So they obviously approached the person and said, hey, how can we help you? Obviously you're new, because you're looking around and stuff. And it just so happened that this person from the community had heard about a donation. They were receiving donations for clothing and things like that, and just showed up on a Sunday morning to donate a duffel bag full of stuff. But you don't know.
Right.
So in that case, it was a good situation.
Right.
But it was still something that needed to be addressed. And if you create a culture where you ignore or dismiss things, you're only going to draw in more problems.
Right.
You have to err on the side of safety. You know, churches need volunteers. You know, you've heard of the 80-20 rule, 20% do all the work, right? And so we have to be careful, though, as a church. We can't just take everyone in if they're willing. It's like, I want to
That's
volunteer.
right.
You really have to go through some safety checks. Now, I know our church we go through like a security check, periodically a background check. And I just had to do that, and I passed it. You know, no problem. You know, I might pass it and come back. No, I don't have a pass like
The
that.
bank robbing.
Yeah,
right?
I know, exactly.
Sure you weren't worried.
But I think that's really important to do periodically, because you never know what might creep in with somebody in between. But you talk about training, the importance of training volunteers as well, not just those background checks. Why is training important before someone ever takes on a role?
Yeah, I love the idea of background checks. Background checks every year for every
Yes.
volunteer.
Yes.
And the reason is not that you're going to catch something, it's you're going to deter. Like, so if
Exactly.
people know you're doing regular background checks,
Right.
those that are looking to do harm are not likely to try to get into your church. But a system of ongoing training is also very important. And so we do quarterly trainings at my church. And it's anything from something as simple as campus security, which is fairly basic. Here are the exits. You know, we'll do a training on, hey, as a reminder, in the case of the need for exiting, we have a process for
Right.
that. Or it could be something as in-depth as recognizing the signs of abuse in a child and some of the things that you may want to do if you notice some things. So when you have a culture of ongoing training, what you do is you're constantly communicating to your people, one, that we value your service,
Exactly.
but two, we're also a place that places a very high priority on safety.
Absolutely. And I think it gets more difficult to manage church safety the larger churches. I mean, right? It's logically makes sense. There's a lot more people. But you have a 10 non-negotiable rules of safety around children, especially, which is incredible. I love that. And students. So can you share some of those with us?
Yes. First, it's just best practice not to be alone with a minor.
Yes.
Right.
If at all possible. I know there's things that come up, particularly if you're taking a 15-year-old home, you know, or whatever, but, you know, from an event, you know, there are times when that happens, but it's always best practice to default to, you know, I don't need to be alone with someone who's 18 and under, who's not my child, right?
Right.
So that's for any age. And frankly, for students, it's not less rules, it's different rules.
There you go.
So just because that young lady or that young man is 15 or 16 years old doesn't mean that there are, you know, less rules. It's just that the rules just change. So there's several. We obviously can't go over all 20 of these rules, but let me just give you a tip.
It's like, let's go to an hour. No,
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
exactly.
Get the book.
Yes, please get the book. I would love for you to get the book. They're all in there. They're all in there. So with a child, one of the things that we have found that is great, so this is just a real practical tip. So with bathroom breaks, that's a very difficult thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Children often need to go to the bathroom at the most awkward of times, but they do. So what we do is we have dedicated child bathrooms, and we leave the doors open at all times. And when someone takes a child to the bathroom, they practice 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So the doors are always open, and when a child goes in, there's somebody who has 1 foot in the bathroom, 1 foot out of the bathroom. And what that does is that says, one, we're safe, but unless there's an emergency or something, we're not going to go in with you. So there's several reasons for that. Obviously, safety of the child, but also safety of the volunteer. Like,
Right.
were you
Yes.
in the bathroom with this child?
Right.
I had 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Right.
So you want to be able to answer questions as well that may arise. And you know, do false accusations occur? They do.
They do?
More rare than normal, so let's recognize that. But we want to be able to have an answer should a question arise.
Right.
Now, with a student, another practical tip here: never promise confidentiality.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a big one.
Yes.
Never promise confidentiality.
Like, don't tell my mom.
Exactly.
Right.
So that 14-year-old comes to you and says, I really need to tell you something. It's big. I need to tell you
Right.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you don't know what that something is. It could be, I've got a crush on a boy.
Right.
It could be something way more serious than that.
Right.
Yes.
So what you cannot do with a young person is say, and if they say, don't tell anybody, you can't say, okay, tell me, I won't tell anyone.
Right.
Right.
That is an inappropriate thing to do. Don't ever promise confidentiality with a young person because you may hear something that needs to be reported.
Right.
You may hear something that
Right.
needs to be told. So I would just say with young people, that's a really big one because a lot of times their minds are not formed. Their souls are still growing.
Right.
Right. They don't understand the gravity of what they may be going through. So it's just unwise to make those blanket promises of confidentiality.
And I would think our old church had a rule that you could only hug a child, like this.
Side hugs.
Sideways.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's important, the way you
Makes sense,
just even touch someone.
Yes, I'm not anti-hug. So in my church, yes, we do give hugs, but I absolutely recommend the side hug. Being just common sense appropriateness.
Right.
Right.
Just common sense appropriateness.
Or asking them if you can, is it okay
Sure.
if I hug you?
Yes.
I mean, we have to do that, especially in the Messianic
Right.
world or the Jewish world. You have to ask before you just automatically start hugging people. So.
Ask if you are unsure. Asking someone beforehand is
Yes.
always just, again, these are best practices, common sense best practices.
Right.
That's good. That's always good to think that through. Yeah, thank you for those pointers. And I was just thinking, what if the worst thing happens and there is a leader at a church that does have, a moral failure or something happens in your youth or children's program? How do you move on from that? I think a lot of people want to hear the answer to this. I think it'll really minister to them.
We are in an era where there seem to be more moral failings. Now, were they always there and not just and swept under the rug and now we're just seeing more? We don't know, but whatever the reason, they're all wrong, right? We can argue about more prevalence, they're all wrong.
Right.
So what do you do? One, depending on what was done, always report, right? So if there is a need to share with, in Florida, where I'm from, the Department of Child and Families, please report. And I understand there's a big, there's a big debate about who's a required reporter, who's not a required. Every state has different laws. I would just say this: if you think something needs to be reported, it doesn't matter if you are a required reporter or not. Report it. So that's something we practice at my church. We've had to call Department of Child and Families on some of our own people. And that is challenging. We have a lot of foster kids in our church. And 30% of our church is 18 and under.
Wow.
So
that
it's
is great.
Yeah, it's a
to
big,
the younger generation.
yeah,
Wow.
Yeah, it's a big deal to us. So I would just say, one, report and let the authorities handle anything if it's at that level. Now, a lot of it does depend on the level of moral offense. If someone overheard the youth pastor say a cuss word at the coffee shop,
Right.
probably needs a good talking to, right?
He's fired. No,
Yeah,
sorry.
I don't know. Depending on the context,
I'm
I
just
don't know
kidding.
that I would let that person go.
Yeah.
Right.
But it is something that does require discipline. So
Right.
that's one degree of offense. There are greater degrees of offense as well. So the response is often dictated by what was done, and you want to respond appropriately. In the case of an all-out moral failure, I think dismissal of the pastor is appropriate, and then any counseling that people need in the church, I think the church should pay for that, and do everything that you can. If there are victims in the church, especially, make sure that you meet them where they are, and that you do everything you can to help with their healing. So what do you do for the whole church? Well, you start with those who are the most impacted, and then you help them. And then what that does is that sends a message to the rest of the church that, hey, we're going to do everything correctly in this situation.
Sometimes you also have the problem with young adult leaders with youth, or sometimes you have that small group kind of a concept too.
Right.
And so you have to really manage that as well, not just pastors.
Right, and that comes back to confidentiality
Yeah.
with the youth, right?
Yeah.
Because if they're involved, you may have to have a third party that's outside that you'll have to bring in, or might require some kind of additional healing or those kinds of things as well.
If an investigation needs to be done, it never starts with an internal investigation. You may want to do an internal investigation, but you want the people who are trained to do the investigations to do them first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This has all been so fascinating, and I hope people will read your book because I know it has valuable information in it. But there was another book you wrote that I'm going to shift gears a minute that I thought was interesting because I've seen this happening in our culture today, and it's called The Surprising Return of the Neighborhood Church. And you probably already know this, but Francis Chan, I've read some of his books, and he was a mega church pastor in California. He left, I guess, the country. I think he went and just did some soul searching and came back. And now he started this, he's planning small churches made up of only 15 to 20 people each. I mean, that is like the Acts 2 kind of congregation. And I have friends who've moved from the mega churches to smaller congregations, and they're so happy. So do you think the mega church is dying? I mean, what do you think about that?
Boy, that's a big question. Do we have another 2 hours to discuss
And he
this?
said,
The mega church movement is waning.
waning. That's
That's
good
the word
thing.
I would use. I wouldn't use the word
dying strong.
well, and I don't think mega churches are going to die out. I think that there is a place for them. I think that churches of all sizes can be used in the kingdom of God. I'm very grateful for the impact of some of these large churches. They can do things that other people can't. That being said, in terms of like sociology and church growth principles and things like that, yes, this megachurch movement is waning. It peaked in 2012. So the number of megachurches in the United States was right around 1,800 in 2012. Today, today it's a little harder to estimate, but from what we can gather with our research, it's 1,000 or under in terms of the number
really
of megachurches.
Maybe Barna needs to do another study on this.
Yeah, Barna's good. Barna's good, and he's done a lot of good research.
Yes,
there
he
are
has.
some very good researchers out there who are tracking this, but we don't have current data, so it's something that needs to be done. That being said, yes, I hope that there is a return to the neighborhood church, not because I want the megachurch to go away, but because I can see it in the data that it's waning, so something must take its place. And there are these churches that are all over the place that have all of this potential. Sometimes people lament that there's a church on every street corner in that town. And I'm like, no, why would we lament a God-honoring presence in a community? I hope that every community has a church on every street corner.
Right.
So that's why I wrote the book, The Surprising Return of the Neighborhood Church, because it's a hopeful look. People aren't just going to show up in neighborhood churches just because. You have to do the work. But there is a waning of a movement with the megachurch. Something else is going to have to take its place in the United States. I believe that part of what could happen is a return of neighborhood churches, 100, 200, 300, 400 people doing ministry in a specific neighborhood. The elementary school's right across the street. We're going to minister there. The local middle school's right down the road. We're going to minister there. I think that there's a lot of potential. We have yet to see that potential be captured, but hopefully the book will inspire people to do more
It's
for the
another one to
neighborhood.
buy.
And it's relational too. A lot of times it's building that relationship and that trust. And I think getting just very intentional, people are a lot more willing then to come to church, or to an area where they feel comfortable. It could be your home or wherever. That's why I think these churches are really going to be effective. And so I know that you've written these books, which is great, and you are the president of Church Answers. So there's resources on your website for churches, including articles, webinars, and demographic research, like we were just talking about, that you can provide. So tell us more about why you started this outreach.
Yeah. So the content of Church Answers reaches 2 out of 3 churches in the United States. We're in every country in the world.
It's great.
So we have a large reach. We have a large audience. We do podcasts. We do articles. So we have a lot of free material at churchanswers.com. So if that's something of interest
Free
to
is
you,
good.
But we do have other resources like Make My Church Safe. So we have a
Right.
whole training for church safety. So you can go to churchanswers.com or you can go to makemychurchsafe.com. And you can find out more there. Thank you for letting me say a little bit about the company. We love doing work in the kingdom of God. We want every church to be healthy. Every church deserves a chance. Every church, I think, has the potential to reach people. If God can save any person, he can save any church. And that's what drives us.
Wow, yes. So we were talking about your podcast earlier, and it is number 4 in the world.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Well,
And-
according to a few rankings,
Hey,
yeah.
we love that. I mean, so it's Rainer on Leadership, right?
Rainer on Leadership is the podcast.
Give us just a quick snapshot of a couple of topics you're covering this week.
Anything that is practical church leadership. So our audience is primarily pastors and church leaders. So if you serve in a ministry in a church, it's for you. If you're a pastor in a church, it's for you. So we do a lot of focus on the practical application of leadership principles. So it's anything from church safety to cantankerous deacons to how do I maximize my facility and utilize it to the glory of God. Yeah. If it's under that
That's
practical
awesome.
church leadership umbrella, we've probably touched on it. We've been doing the podcast thing for more years than I can count. I think it's 15 years now
Wow.
plus, something like that. Yeah.
That's
great.
great.
Two weekly episodes.
We can tell
cool.
you're experienced with this kind of thing because
Yes.
you've been great. Thank you so much, Sam, for coming all the way from Bradenton, Florida to Dallas, Texas to be on this show. We're just so blessed to have you here, and we just love the work that you're doing. I know you're helping
Absolutely.
so many people with this information, especially in this book, Make My Church Safe. And so if you want to learn more about Sam Rainer's great work to help churches stay healthy, you can find him at his website, churchanswers.com. And all of his books, including the couple that we talked about today, this one, Make My Church Safe, are on Amazon.
And we hope you'll follow Pearls of Promise on social media. We're on Facebook at Pearls of Promise Ministries. We're present on Instagram at @pop_ministries, and we're on X at Pop Talk Media. Check out all of our award-winning documentaries and past Pop Talk shows on our YouTube channel at Pearls of Promise Ministries.
And thanks to our amazing production media. For all your media needs, go to gracepoint.media. And we are also so grateful for our 25 television and radio platforms.
And Grace Point Media has a brand new studio that we're so happy
So
to
awesome.
be in.
I love this.
It's
So
beautiful.
awesome.
So that is today's Pop Talk show. We're just ordinary girls.
Who God turned into pearls. Have a wonderful week.